The process of sexual selection, which is mediated usually by male competition or by female choice, is often manifest in the form of sexual structures, which are physical structures that are often present on one sex, such as males, and not on another, such as females, or perhaps diminished in the other sex. These sexual structures often play a vital role in the process of male competition or in female choice. In the case of anoline lizards, a common lizard found throughout the Caribbean and Central and South America, the dewlaps shown here, which are large flaps of skin extended by hyoid bones, are enigmatic structures that, although they have been well studied, their actual function and purpose is very poorly understood. And one of the most important and perhaps understudied aspects in relation to anoline dewlaps is the fact that many anole lizards, just like many lizards, are highly polygynous. It means that they actively defend territories, and one of the ways they defend these territories is by actually biting other rivals. Shown here in the above is a picture of a male lizard biting another male lizard, and the bottom part shows the scars that is incurred during a fight. And it turns out there's a strong linkage between the ability to bite and defend territories and the actual size of the anoline dewlap. But first, let me show you some data actually looking at how bite force, which we can measure in anoline lizards using a bite force transducer, is much higher in winners than in losers when you put them in a cage match. This means that this ability of this animal to perform makes the difference between being a loser and being a winner, and potentially having access to females. Furthermore, in some anoline species, there is a positive relationship between the size of the dewlap and how hard you bite. In other words, the larger your dewlap is, the harder you bite. This is true for several kinds of anoles that are highly territorial anoles that actually defend territories and advertise their biting quality through their dewlaps. Whereas in other anoles, shown in the bottom, indicate there's actually no relationship. So this suggests that in some very territorial lizards, the size of the dewlap is an honest signal of male quality, whereas in other anoles that are not territorial, there is actually no such relationship. And one of the interesting features of anoline lizards is their dramatic diversity in morphology, behavior, and social life. For example, there are anoline lizards that are highly territorial, that defend territories, such as on tree trunks, and live high in the canopy. There are other species that live low down on the ground that mimic grades of glass, and there are species that actually mimic twigs and are very non-territorial. When one examines these different anole species and conducts tests within cages to examine what are the factors that determine male dominance, one sees that as these lizards become more sexually dimorphic, in other words, as the males become larger than the females, the fact is that it is bite strength that plays the most important role in determining winning and losing. So in other words, the more dimorphic a species is, which is often a sign of the intensity of sexual selection via male competition, the more likely it is that how hard you bite is going to determine whether or not you're a winner or loser for that species. By contrast, as species become less dimorphic or less territorial, it is actually the size of the dewlap that is the most important factor. And this raises a very somewhat confounding issue. How can these two different factors be counteropposed if we see within species that dewlap area is a significant relationship to bite force? And the reason for this is because their dewlap size appears to play two fundamentally different roles within two different groups of species. Within polygynous species, such as shown here in yellow and in white, actually the dewlap is an honest signal. That means the larger the dewlap, the harder these animals bite, and high bite forces predict male dominance. In other words, for these animals, the larger your dewlap is, the more powerful you are, the more likely you are to win fights. But in non-territorial anoles, shown in red, large dewlaps predict male dominance, but bite forces do not. And what this reflects is the fact that in a smaller arena, such as the situation we have put them in, essentially sexual signals don't play a real role. These sexual signals only play a role for non-territorial species that use them to display to one another and actually prevent biting. Whereas in very territorial species, these animals actually use their destructive bite force capacity to win fights. And in fact, it's territorial anoles that actually use their large dewlaps to defend territories from long distance. But much as in a cage match where animals are put close together, sexual signals no longer become important in that case, the animals simply start fighting. This shows that the function of the dewlap is actually dual-fold and actually explains why it's been so difficult to understand the role of the dewlap in this enigmatic group of species. And we believe that these results indicate that one cannot apply a single one-size-fits-all survey to understand how animals evolve sexual structures within complex adaptive radiations.